That's right, folks. It's episode 4 of In the Car with Paddy, and that is still our theme song. We haven't improved upon it, and I'm beginning to think we likely never will. So today it's a little bit different. You might notice I'm in the car, but I'm not driving. I'm actually at the 8-year-old son's rugby training, which was a bit harsh last week. They put the under 8s, the under 9s, the under 10s, and the under 11s together, which I thought might have been a little bit unfair. But anyway, Samuel being in the under 9s, actually they didn't include the under 8s, they just had the under 9s, the under 10s, and the 11s. He got smashed around a bit. So you get that on the big jobs. It'll toughen him up. This week, suffice to say, he's wearing full headgear, he's wearing a chest protector, he is kitted out and ready to go. And let me tell you, before we get into my topic of the week, that boy, when he's got ball in hand and open space, he's like greased lightning. Nothing stops him. Scores a lot of tries. Just like his old man. No. Anybody watching this that played rugby with me in the 1980s is screaming at their phone right now, "You're a liar, Paddy Hall. You never scored any tries." I scored 2 tries. 2 tries in 7 years of rugby. Anyway, so this week I wanted to talk about my favourite topic. That's right, politics. Well, not really politics, more like entertainment. I want to talk about the clown in the White House. Some of you know that if you follow me on Facebook, obviously you do if you're watching this, that I always refer to the current president, as the clown. And I've actually copped grief from people on Facebook in Australia. People have actually said, "Oh, that's so disrespectful. How can you show such little respect for the office of President of the United States of America?" Like, come on, guys. What universe are we living in where I am automatically obliged to show respect for the leader of another country? I'm not in the Foreign Diplomatic Corps, and it's 2025. You get the respect you deserve. And yeah, I don't have any respect for this guy. I like to play, rounded new age guy on social media. But if you're in a closed messaging group with me, you'll know that I can be fairly distasteful at times, or even tasteless. But I don't like Trump. I don't like him. I think he's very distasteful, to be honest. And I think he's quite pathetic and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to explain. I call him the clown because he's an entertainer. That's the persona that he has taken on in his gig, which right now is President of the United States. He's not a successful businessman. He's not an author. He's not a deal maker. He's not a politician. He's not a deep thinker, but he is a very, very good entertainer. He had 14 years at The Apprentice, 9 years, 14 seasons. He made about $500 million out of that through licensing and direct payments. But more importantly, he cemented his role in the lexicon of American culture, and that is as the clown. He's got the silly hairdo, he's got the silly tie, he's got the silly dance, he likes to talk silly, he makes bad jokes, he plays it up. That works for him. He's extremely successful as an entertainer, and that's what he's doing right now. He's entertaining Americans. So a little bit of background here. I may have mentioned this before. Donald Trump, the clown, first mentioned that he wanted to become president in 1987, but he hadn't decided then whether he would be president via the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. He eventually threw his hat in with the Republican Party, had a half-assed go of it. I think it was 87. It really wasn't very successful, fell by the wayside. Found out very quickly that politics is actually much, much harder than people give it credit for. And when I say harder, I mean it's hard work. My grandfather was a member of the state parliament, and I can tell you that guy was the hardest working man in rock and roll. It was 7 days a week, 15 hours a day. It was non-stop. My neighbour on the Central Coast many years ago was the local mayor, and then he became the state member for Gosford. Again, 7 days a week. In fact, I think being mayor was possibly even harder. Anyway, it's hard work. You've got to be really committed. I have an enormous amount of time and respect for politicians as a group, because if you do it, you've got to be committed. You've got to be serious. And there's a few bad apples in the bunch. There's a few bad apples everywhere you go. But anyway, so the clown finds out it's hard work, falls by the wayside, doesn't go back. He said to Ruby Wax in 1995 that he would like to be president, but it was never really serious. Then in 2011, he'd thrown his whole franchise in with the Republican Party, and he'd gotten behind this birther thing. His racist tendencies. Yeah, he's a racist. He's absolutely a racist. Maybe that comes from his German heritage. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unkind to Germans by saying that. But yeah, he's an out-and-out racist. And there's any number of people that have worked closely with him, have known him, will tell you that. The only people who say he's not a racist are people that don't know him and have never worked with him. But anyway, he got behind the whole birther thing with Obama. And at a White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011, and this is worth looking up on YouTube if you get a chance, 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, Barack Obama took the piss out of Donald J. Trump big time. And that's what the White House Correspondents' Dinners are for. Everybody kind of from both sides of politics and the media and whatever, they all kind of like, ha, 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 we're all here having a go at each other. It's all good fun, jolly japes. We're all making jokes at each other's expenses. I think they must raise money for charity or something. Anyway, the one man that wasn't getting the joke this night was Donald J. Trump, and the camera kept panning to him, and he was not a happy camper. So he left that dinner, apparently said to his people, that's it, I want to run for president in 2012. The people around him, the financial backers, because you need financial backers. Nobody is rich enough to run for president on their own. You need backers, financially and socially. You need people to back you. And they all said, it's too late. You've left your run too late. So he threw his support behind Mitt Romney, who is a very different man to Donald Trump. And apparently, so what I'm told is the night that Mitt Romney acquiesced to Obama and said, you know, I haven't won, Trump was at his function. I think it was in New York. I'm not 100% sure where it was. But he left that function. He stormed out when it was clear that Romney was going to lose, went home to his house, to his apartment in New York, and started ringing people and stayed on the phone till 2 or 3 in the morning, ringing people all around the state saying, that's it, I'm running in 2016. I don't think any of them really took him all that seriously. There are advantages to backing somebody in a primary in the US elections, even if you know they're not going to win. I don't quite know how that works, but there are people that do that sort of thing. So he got backers. And again, he's not a deep thinker. He didn't have policies. He didn't have a vision. He doesn't have a strategy. Let's be clear here. 2016 and 2025. There is no complex Trump strategy. Nobody is going to be studying in years to come in politics or governmental studies or foreign policy or whatever. Nobody's going to be looking up the Trump doctrine of 2025 or 2026. It just doesn't exist. So anyway, but what he was good at is he's an entertainer. He's a very good entertainer. And he rolled over in 2015 to 2016, he rolled over what has been described by one person I heard recently, described as possibly the best primary candidates range ever put forward by the Republican Party. Open to conjecture on that one. I'm no expert. I know Marco Rubio was on it. I know who else was on it? Ted Cruz. There was a bunch of them. And Ted Cruz, that's not telling you much. But anyway, so he rolled those guys in a very entertaining fashion. He was very good at the debates. The style that he developed on The Apprentice worked for him very well in a live scenario, very entertaining. And more importantly, the Democrats did their bit by putting the wrong candidate up. And just a word to the wise there, or a note there. It's now accepted that I could have my dates wrong here, but prior to the 2008 election, the Clintons, who are royalty within the Democratic Party, like it or not, that's what they are, made a deal with Barack Obama because it was Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was the first person of note, the first Washington insider to acknowledge that Barack Obama, this young state congressman from Illinois, had the goods and could potentially become the first black president of America. You could argue that it was Hillary Clinton that got him his first start. He made that. He made a very famous speech at the 2004 or 2003 Democratic Convention, and I think that was the "Yes We Can" speech. And he was off and running from there. And then he became the candidate in 2008. But anyway, the Clintons and the Obama camp made a deal. They would both go for the nomination in 2008. Whichever one lost would support the other one for their 2 terms. And then whoever won that nomination in 2008 after 2 terms as a president would then throw their weight behind the other to be the president in 2016. The Clintons probably made that deal assuming that Hillary Clinton would be the presidential candidate in 2008. They were wrong. Obama beat Hillary and got the nomination, and the deal was then set that Obama would then support Hillary in 2016. And that's one of the reasons why Joe Biden was selected as a vice president by Obama, because that was the upfront conversation. Whoever runs as my vice president doesn't get a shot at being the president in 2016 because I will be supporting Hillary Clinton. Interesting. I don't know why Obama didn't take Hillary Clinton as his vice president, but anyway, that's another story. And that's why Joe Biden didn't run for the presidency in 2016. Hillary Clinton became the candidate. She was not the right candidate. She was not the best candidate. She would have made a fantastic president, but that doesn't mean she's a good candidate. She was never going to win that election, and they should have known better. They know better now. Although, do they? I don't know. They didn't put the right, or they didn't go through the right candidate selection process at the last election, and that cost them that election as well. Anyway, long story short, Trump becomes the 2016 president. He surrounds himself, or he is automatically surrounded by Washington Republican hacks and people that have been in the system a long time. Guys like John Bolton, who started out with Ronald Reagan and worked for George Bush Sr. and then worked for George Bush Jr. and, had been around a long, long time. Rex Tillerson, old school oil and gas guy, head of Exxon for a long time. That could arguably not be such a great thing, but he was actually very good at his job. He was a pretty smart guy, Rex Tillerson, for an oil man. And Michael Flynn, people like that, very respected ex-military man. Funny thing is, a number of these guys, Tillerson and Flynn, who are part of Trump's first administration, very strong ties to Russian money. That's no secret. You can look up YouTube and you'll see pictures of both Rex Tillerson and Michael Flynn sitting next to Vladimir Putin at events going way back into the early 2000s. Long time commercial partners of Russia, and immediate first upstarts for Trump's first presidency. Just on that whole Russian thing, as I said before, Trump is not a successful businessman in the traditional sense. What he was also very good, apart from being an entertainer, very, very good at laundering money. And he laundered an enormous amount of money for the Russian mafia. So every time he put his name to a real estate development, even if it was just his name going on the door, his clip of the ticket came from the sales of the units. He wouldn't build the units. He would just get his clip of the ticket every time some were sold. And the first half a dozen units were always sold to Russians. Always. You can go back and look at the records. Almost every, and they were always the top floor penthouses, and they always paid arguably more money than they needed to. So they were just pumping money into these things. There was that straightforward, but they were also pumping money into scams and schemes that Trump set up over the years that then went on to lose money. I'm no expert in how it works, but that's apparently how you launder money. So anyway, so let's get back to Trump's first year. Those people that surrounded Trump did what they were there to do. They acted as a handbrake on him. They held him back. He was new. He thought he had to do things the way they'd done it, even though he said he'd drain the swamp. He had, I don't know if he really ever had any intent to drain the swamp, but he followed the guidance of the professionals around him. And as a result, he didn't really get much done. Again, no one's going to be looking back in years to come at these critical things that Donald Trump did in 2017 and 18 and 19 and 20. They will look at what he did in January 2021, but and what he did around the election in 2020, but they're not going to be looking at that in a favourable light. So anyway, that first presidency, bit of a wash. Not long after the 2020 election, in early 2021, everybody in the Republican Party who had to face a camera, everybody was disavowing Donald Trump. They were all saying, you know, Mitch McConnell was a classic example. I will not have anything to do with that man, you know, blah, 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 blah. Within 3 or 4 months, those people were being told by their financial backers, because they're the people that control what politicians in Washington and probably Canberra to some extent do. The people that controlled the purse strings were saying to those Republican politicians, you will go down to Mar-a-Lago, you will kiss the ring, because Donald Trump is going to be put back in the White House in 2024. We now understand how this worked. They basically went back to Trump and said, we've identified these are the people with the money and the agenda. We've identified that you're the guy. You're the guy that doesn't really care what people think about him. You're the guy that's old enough not to have to worry about a career. You've got 4 more years available to you to be in the White House. We'll get you into the White House. We'll get you through the Supreme Court. We'll get you presidential immunity so that the next time you're in the White House, you can really do whatever you want. And we will give you 2 years. The first 2 years of your presidency, you can do whatever you like. You can pander to your base. You can do whatever you like. Whatever kooky scheme you come up with, it's yours. Break NATO, abandon Ukraine, bring back plastic straws, be nasty to transgender athletes, because that's a massive issue. Defund the education department. Crazy, crazy stuff, right? You can do all that because we'll have our agenda. Now, I'm not 100% sure exactly what that agenda is. I'd hazard a guess to say the people behind Trump this time round, and let's be clear, there's not a single person, not one person from Trump's first administration is involved in this administration. Not one. And there's not one person from his first administration that even wants to say anything nice about him. People like Rex Tillerson called him a moron. That was while he was working for Trump. Anthony Scaramucci, long-time fundraiser for the Republican Party, spends most of his waking hours these days talking on his podcast about what an idiot Trump is and the fact that he's a thought-free zone, right? And how dangerous he is. Who else? John Bolton, totally abandoned. John Bolton is an arch conservative, right? Trump should be right up his alley. John Bolton is coming out and saying this guy is really dangerous. Even Steve Bannon, oh my God. Oh, Steve Bannon is even abandoning Trump, and Trump's abandoning Steve Bannon. Anyway, it's all out of control. So he's got this new crew of flunkies around him. None of them are professional politicians. There's a couple of bureaucrats in there. There's a couple of old school financial people who do know what they're doing and do know better. So they must be in on the joke, right, to be involved with this. They must know what's going on behind the scenes because there's a couple of smart people in there. But most of them, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is a news anchor from Fox News. No way qualified to be Defense Secretary. And guess what? He's setting up WhatsApp chat groups or Signal chat groups to share, other people are setting up the chat groups, and Pete Hegseth is then sharing details of military events that are about to take place on a commercial I can't even go on. Anyway, so those people are there. Trump gets to do whatever he likes. The people behind him come in. They will now privatize FEMA, education, health, USAID. USAID, you can take USAID away. It has to come back. That's a whole other 1 hour in the car with Paddy conversation point. You can't just switch USAID off. I mean, and that's not me saying, oh, no, you shouldn't just switch. You can't do it. There is a whole economic structure in Africa that the Americans benefit from and American organizations benefit from that relies upon USAID. So what you do is you switch the tap off. It's like I switch the tap off in my garden. My plants don't die because eventually I'm going to switch the tap back on and give them some water. So he switched the tap off for USAID. Eventually he has to turn the tap back on. He might not put as much money back into USAID, but this time around it's going to be privatized. Same with FEMA. You switch FEMA off, and then you have friends come in and say, well, I can do what FEMA used to do, but you just need to give me fee for service. And boy, my rates in the middle of a tornado or a hurricane or an earthquake or whatever, they're not going to be cheap. So where else? USAID. Defense. So BlackRock has just purchased 145 days ago, BlackRock started negotiating. Now, 145 days is about August or September of last year. That's about a month or two after Donald J. Trump was given presidential immunity, or he established this concept of presidential immunity. Actually, that is one thing that is going to get discussed in future universities and colleges around the world. But anyway, 1st of July, Donald J. Trump was awarded presidential immunity by the Supreme Court. Exactly 2 weeks later, supposedly somebody shot his ear off. Somehow a bullet from an AR-15 went within less than a centimetre of his skull, and all that happened to him was he got just a bit of a nick, and that's it. So that if you look at his ear today, there's just there's nothing there. So even though most trauma surgeons would say a bullet going that close to any part of your body will break the bones within that part. So in theory, all the bones around here in Donald J. Trump's head should be broken. Anyway, that's another story. So he gets shot at on the 13th of July. On the 13th of July, Elon Musk throws his weight behind him. And about a month later, BlackRock start negotiating to buy the 2 ports at the start and end of the Panama Canal. There's a lot going on here. And it all started on the 1st of July when Donald J. Trump was awarded presidential immunity. That's when the serious money behind him went, yeah, it's on. We can get this guy now to do anything. He has 20 months between now and the next midterms. The next midterm elections, I don't care what your political beliefs are. I don't care if you think the clown is the best thing since sliced bread. Anybody who knows anything about American politics knows that the Republicans are going to get smashed at the midterms in November next year. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. It happens most times anyway. Most second-term presidents get smashed at the midterms. But Donald J. Trump, he's already riding a wafer-thin margin. He has a 1-seat margin in the Senate, and he has, I think, a 3-seat margin in Congress. All of Congress comes up in the midterms in November next year. A third of the Senate comes up. 40 states and territories have governor elections next November. You are going to see a wave of Democrat governors in states across America. You're going to see a huge wave of Democrat seats in Congress. So they will hold Congress for the next 4 to 6 years. And you're going to see the Democrats easily retain or regain rather the majority in the Senate. So that means he's got now till November to do whatever he likes. He doesn't care about the courts. The courts can't act that quickly. The Supreme Court can't stop him from doing anything in that time frame. They will twist and breeze for the next 2 or 3 years. They'll end up deciding that what he did was wrong 2 years after he left the presidency, right? But he's got presidential immunity, so that doesn't matter anyway. By then, the damage is done. His mates have come in. They've taken over the privatization. What does this all mean? And why am I talking to you all here today? Why am I dragging this on and on and on? Because we need to make sure this doesn't happen in Australia. Nothing like this ever happens in Australia. And don't think that what happens in America isn't going to be replicated in some way here in Australia. I don't think we're going to see the kind of craziness that's going on in America right now, but we are going to see people like Gina Reinhart and Clive Palmer and anybody else with a large amount of money, maybe the boys from Atlassian, who knows, start coming in and wielding their influence, because what they've seen is that you can do it. Okay, Trump has shown that you can throw your weight around. You can be a bull in a china shop, and you can seemingly get a short-term result. For some people, that'll be a very good thing. For the vast majority of people, that short-term result will take generations to undo. Americans are going to come to rue the day they ever put a clown in the White House.